Hello, hello everyone. It's nice to see you. Let's have some fun. Hey everyone, Vicky here to see what adventures we have to share. Well guys, it's lovely to see you. Really lovely to see you. We have a lovely new studio. It's so starry-fied. It's twinkly, isn't it? It's really lovely. Just like twinkle, twinkle, little star. Wow. Wow, we've got a new week this week. But before we begin, we have, yeah, you guessed it, a shout out. Shout out, guys. I want to say a special hello to Verity. Hi Verity, welcome to Storytime with Vicky. Vicky says hello. Lovely to see you. Well guys, we have a new week this week and it's Mr. Men Week. Mr. Men, yay! We have 3 new stories this week and our first story is Mr. Messy. Mr. Messy! He's a very messy character. Well, this one is written by Roger Hargreaves. And it's published by Therma Publishing. Well, get your cosy blankets ready and your cuddly toys and we will begin the story. Okay then guys, get myself comfortable. Alright, Mr. Messy. Okay, it's only a little book, this one. They're so small, look at them, they're so tinny. These are like 20, they used to be 20p, you can see that. 20p, wow, can you imagine spending 20p on a book? That'd be amazing, wouldn't it? Right, let's begin then, shall we? Oh, it's got fingerprints all over it. Mr. Messy was the messiest person you had ever met in your whole life. He looked messy because he was messy. In everything he did. You could always tell where Mr. Messy had been because he left a trail of messy fingerprints wherever he had been. Oh yes, Mr. Messy by name and messy by nature. Dearie me. Oh, look at his house. Look at his house. It's all falling apart. Mr. Messy lived in a particular messy looking house. The paint was peeling. The windows were broken. There were tiles missing from the roof. The flower beds were overgrown with weeds. The garden gate was off its hinges. And had Mr. Messy cut the grass in his garden lately? He had not. Oh dear. One morning, Mr. Messy woke up in his messy bed, yawned and scratched his head. Got up, cleaned his teeth, leaving the top off the toothpaste. Had his breakfast, spilling cornflakes all over the floor. And then set off for a walk, tripping over the brush he'd left laying in the garden 2 weeks before. Oh dear, oh no. There was a wood behind Mr. Messy's house with the messy garden and that's where he went for his walk. It was a particularly large wood with lots and lots of trees, and it took Mr. Messy a long time to walk through it. But he didn't really mind because he felt like walking that morning. So he walked and walked right through the wood until he came to the other side. And do you know what he found on the other side of the wood? Oh, we better see what happened, what he saw. Mr. Messy found the neatest, prettiest looking cottage that he had ever seen. Look how tidy that house is compared to Mr. Messy's. It had a lovely garden with a stream running through it. There was a man in the garden clipping his hedge. He looked up at Mr. Messy approaching. "Good morning, I'm Mr. Messy," said Mr. Messy. "I can see that," replied the man, looking up and down at him. "I'm Mr. Tidy." "And I'm Mr. Neat," said another man, appearing out of the house. "Tidy and neat," said Mr. Tidy. "Neat and tidy," said Mr. Neat. There they are. "We're in business together," explained Mr. Tidy, "and the people who own this house have asked us to do some work for them." "What sort of work?" asked Mr. Messy. "Oh, we make things nice and neat," said Mr. Neat. "Tidy things up," added Mr. Tidy. "Perhaps we could come along and do some work for you." "Oh dear," said Mr. Neat, looking at Mr. Messy, who was looking even messier than usual that particular morning. "But I don't want things neat and tidy at the thought of it." Yeah, he's Mr. Messy, isn't he? He doesn't really like to be neat and tidy. "Nonsense," said Mr. Tidy. "Fiddlesticks," said Mr. Neat. "But," said Mr. Messy. "Come along," said Mr. Neat. "Off we go," said Mr. Tidy. But, said Mr. Messy. "But nothing," said Mr. Neat. And bundling him into their van, which was parked behind the house, off they went to Mr. Messy's house at the other side of the wood. Oh dear. And it says neat and tidy on their van. "Good heavens," said Mr. Neat, when he saw where Mr. Messy lived. "Good gracious me," added Mr. Tidy. "This is the messiest house I have ever seen in my born days." They both said together at the same time. "Better do something about it," said Mr. Neat. And before Mr. Messy could open his mouth again, the two of them were rushing here and there about Mr. Messy's house. Oh dear. Mr. Neat hoed and mowed and pruned and snipped and clipped and cleared and dug and made his garden look neater than it had ever looked before. Oh look, that's very neat now, isn't it? Sorted out those weeds, I see. Mr. Tidy cleaned and trimmed and rubbed and painted and mended and made the outside of Mr. Messy's house look tidier than it had ever looked before. Oh, that's very kind hands, isn't it? Then they both went inside the house. "Good heavens," said Mr. Neat for the second time that morning. "Good gracious," said Mr. Tidy for the second time that morning. And then they set about cleaning the house from top to bottom. They brushed and swept and polished and scrubbed and made the inside of the house look neater and tidier than it had ever looked before. Wow, look, he's got his paintbrush there. Well, he hasn't got his overalls on though. He's going to get that suit a little bit dirty. I suppose he won't, will he? Because he's tidy, Mr. Tidy. "There we are," said Mr. Tidy. "All finished," said Mr. Neat. "Tidy and neat," said Mr. Tidy. Neat and tidy, said Mr. Neat. Mr. Messy just didn't know what to say. There, they're both smiling, aren't they? Happy with the work they've done. Then they both looked at Mr. Messy. Are you thinking what I'm thinking, Mr. Neat? said to Mr. Tidy. Precisely, said Mr. Tidy. Replied Mr. Tidy. What we're both thinking, they said together to Mr. Messy, is that you look much too messy to live in a neat and tidy house like this. But, said Mr. Messy, oh no. But whatever Mr. Messy said was no use, and Mr. Neat and Mr. Tidy whisked him off to the bathroom upstairs. It had been the messiest room in the house, but now, of course, it was neat as a new pin. Then Mr. Neat got hold of Mr. Messy's arms, and Mr. Tidy got hold of the other arm, and they picked him up and put him straight in the bath. Oh my! Mr. Messy wasn't used to having baths. He's got a sad face, isn't he? Oh dear. Mr. Neat and Mr. Tidy washed and brushed and cleaned and scrubbed and combed Mr. Messy until he didn't look like Mr. Messy at all. In fact, he looked like the opposite of messy. He looked at himself in the mirror. You know what I'm going to have to do now, he said in a rather fierce voice. Mr. Neat and Mr. Tidy looked worried. Oh dear. What are you going to have to do? They asked Mr. Messy. I'm going to have to change my name, said Mr. Messy. And they chuckled. And Mr. Neat and Mr. Tidy chuckled too. And then Mr. Messy laughed. And Mr. Neat and Mr. Tidy laughed. And then they all laughed together and became the best of friends. And that is really the end of the story, except to say that if you're a messy sort of person, you might have a visit from two people. Mr. Neat and Mr. Tidy. And you know what they are called. Oh, that was fab, wasn't it? What do you think Mr. Mess is going to change his name to then? Oh, is it Mr. Clean? Mr. Sparkle? Mr. Shine? That was good, wasn't it? I liked that one. Wow, that was a really good story. I really enjoyed that. Wasn't that good? That'd be nice if someone could come over and clean my house for me once in a while, eh? Oh, dearie me. Or maybe you can help Mummy and Daddy clean once in a while. I think they really enjoy that. Well, thank you all for coming. It's been super fun. Off to bed now until the night is done. Good night to you all. Hope you laughed and had a ball. Snuggle down. It's time for sleep. Close your eyes and count some Z's. Good night, come again. See you next time. That's the end. That's the end. See you guys. Bye. I'll see you Wednesday. Bye.